So, for a time in the late 1970s and 80s, Elena Ceaușescu of Romania was one of the two most powerful women on earth. The other was the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Margaret Thatcher, who was actually elected by the people of her country, for better or worse. But Elena Ceaușescu was the president's wife and was perhaps not only the most powerful woman on the continent, but the most hated as well. Even more hated than the purple bitch. I mean witch. She was the wife of Romania's Nicolae Ceaușescu, the dictator Nicolae Ceaușescu, and was actually 2 years his elder, who ruled Romania with an iron fist from the years of 1965 until their untimely death of 1989 by the gunshotitis. So over the course of his rule, Ceaușescu and his wife organized a cult of personality around the leader, which in many ways paralleled that of Mao, Kim Il-sung, Stalin, and even Hitler. Right. Chairman Mao Zedong of China, the supreme leader of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, the great leader of our Soviet Republic, Stalin, and of course Hitler, yeah? Ooh. So as his role went on, the Ceaușescus not only fostered his own personality cult, but actually preyed on it. He spent much of Romania's gross domestic product, or GDP, on his palace, which is one of the largest buildings on earth, and especially in Europe. Some say even rivals Buckingham Palace, not outshines Buckingham Palace, and created a security apparatus that was so extensive that the Stasi were like, "Are you a Securitate or are you a Stasi?" That's a good question. It is actually estimated that over 10% of the country's population was actually informants or were Securitate themselves. Now, this was done to ensure and prolong his personal rule, not for the benefit of the country. Those opposing Ceaușescu and his wife, their family, and their cronies many times disappeared for the good. Probably a vacation to Hawaii. Never got the plane back. Side by side with the president was his wife, Elena. Around her, another personality cult was constructed. The official statement was that she was referred to as the mother of our nation. Many Romanians had other or not so flattering names for her. Not bright, they say, devious, vindictive, and intensely concerned with her not so good look. I should be paying those people a visit right about now. The great and glorious Elena Ceaușescu is the brightest woman on earth. Alright, so a bit about the woman herself, the great and glorious. She was born into a peasant family and never really finished high school. Like many other poor people at the beginning of the 20th century, she turned to communism as a means by which the working poor could actually achieve and have a larger or the only say to how the country should be run, right? Now, she was a diehard communist, but one thing to mention though, she did finish high school with a high needle mark, the seamstress of our nation. So in 1939, she met Nicolae Ceaușescu, who, by all accounts, was much more dedicated to communism than she was. As far as anyone could tell, it was love at first sight for Nicolae. And many Romanians and historians believe that almost from the start, Elena had him in the palm of her hand. I was so attractive, they didn't even know. They were married in 1947, at the time when the Soviet-sponsored communists were taking over Eastern Europe and the Cold War was now beginning and really getting into that full swing. Now, some 27 years later, let's say 1968, Nicolae Ceaușescu had risen to the top of the Romanian Communist Party, and by 1945 became the head of the party. 2 years later, he was elected president of the Republic. So at first, Ceaușescu was a relatively popular figure as far as communist leaders would go. He did introduce some benefits to the workers, and over the course of the first 5 years in office, made his own way in foreign policy at the time. When most communist regimes in Eastern Europe set their cues from Moscow, "Please, Big Daddy Khrushchev or Brezhnev, do not kill me, please." When coal miners went on strike in 1977, party apparatchiks told the miners that the great leader and his great advisor and his wife were personally looking to work on the solution for their problems and could not meet with them right now. In reality, they were spending their time in the Black Sea resort next to Bulgaria, complemented with servants. I do not speak Bulgarian, but I will have another martini, please. And put that little umbrella. That is very cute. You know, Elena? Yes, yes, dear, it is. So as Elena traveled the world, she became more and more jealous of what others had. Trust me there. Ferdinand Marcos got me all of these shoes, but he could never fulfill me. New shoes. Good idea, sister. So in China, she got jealous of the power of Mao Zedong's wife, Jiang Qing, who was actually eventually imprisoned by Mao's enemies as the Gang of Four after Mao died. And in the Philippines, she was jealous of the opulent lifestyle and the good looks of Imelda Marcos, who was also overthrown but not as bloody as the Gang of Four. So maybe she was more jealous of the fact that these people kind of got away with their lives. As the years went by, she became so vain that she would not allow profile pictures of herself or herself to be published, as a great and glorious leader has now have the gray hairs and was getting kind of saggy, but she was still kind of beautiful in a fine wine aging way. and what photos did reach the public eyes were usually doctored in some way. So she was the original Instagram model, a beautiful woman ahead of her time, conscious of her large nose, her posture, and even plain peasant features, even though she wanted to be seen as started from the bottom. But as you grow, you know. When the communists came to power, Elena Ceaușescu was the secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and she was the best foreign secretary ever. She made peace deals with the Muslims and the Jews. She made North and South Koreans hug for the first time in over 50 years, and she was actually not a very good one. So from 1972 on, however, as her husband solidified his power, she was elevated to more and more powerful government positions and governmental positions. So over the course of the late 1970s and into the late 1980s, she was appointed or elected to more and more positions within the government and the Communist Party. And in the late 1980s, she was made the first deputy prime minister, second only in power to her husband Nicolae Ceaușescu. She was made first deputy prime minister, second only in power to her husband. She was known to be an exceptionally vindictive person, whose bad side did not really want to get on. Her enemies, real or perceived, found themselves in the dead-end jobs in remote parts of the country like Timisoara, or worse, a bunk in a labor camp of the glorious time mining minerals for Elena Ceaușescu, or at the worst, the end of a rifle barrel, which Elena Ceaușescu would get very acquainted with in 1989 as well. She was a good shot. Both she and her husband eventually ran the nation less like a communist one and more like their own personal fiefdom. Many compared the Ceaușescus, the Honecas, the Zenikovs, the Gustav Huskas, maybe Wojciech Jaruzelski, less like communist leaders and more like a, mafia organization. If there was money to be made, the Ceaușescus had their hand well in the cookie jar that was empty. Elena was not jealous of any old woman, and Elena was not only jealous of those women who were better looking than her and more stylish than her, but but of anyone with more education than her. So at the end of her life, however, she had a PhD in chemistry and was actually the author of many scholar papers on the subject of chemistry. However, the real story is that she paid off and actually kind of plagiarized notes, kind of like how I did, and kind of conquered scientists to write her doctorates and other papers for her. Now, listen here, young man. I expect a paper on zinc, copper, and iron. That is what the country needs, and that is what I need to have a PhD in chemistry. But you're the great, glorious Nikolai and Elena Ceaușescu, ma'am. Those are actually minerals from the earth and nothing to do with chemistry at all. They're just on the periodic table. I know this, but I want gold. I'm telling you, gold is a combustible mineral. Because I wear it all the time and I blow up the scene. Those few who actually refused found themselves never receiving a promotion ever again, never teaching a class in any province ever again, and especially not getting funding ever again. Though it was actually an open secret that Elena Ceaușescu never did any of her work, research, or even writing papers. No one either within Romania, and especially internationally, and even her own husband, called her out for it. You're doing great, honey. You look beautiful. Nice paper. Why, thank you. She was the wife of the most powerful man in the country, whose nations did millions of dollars in business internationally, and calling them out for it means no potatoes for you, America. She was also the head of many different government departments having to do with the sciences. In her role as the head of the country's sciences, she actually gained the nickname, a very flattering one indeed, which is Coide, which is actually the Romanian pronunciation of the abbreviation of CO2 or CO, which is carbon oxygen or carbon dioxide, and Do, the Romanian word for two. So she was basically using up twice the oxygen as most people. Big head. And of course, it was not a flattering one. But I'm the Minister of Propaganda, of course. Alright, last one here, guys. It was no accident that the word Codi was not just an acronym, but was an actual word in Romanian meaning big tail, which Elena Ceaușescu tried to hide and tried to downplay and snout away. Romania was one of the last Eastern European nations to experience an anti-communist wave in 1989, actually, but it would be the most bloodiest revolution of 1989 that broke out in December after Timișoara, and on Christmas Day, Elena and her husband were convicted and after a short trial was shot. And there ends the life of the great, glorious Bullet. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. A bit more relaxed, a bit more free-flowing. Anyway, my grandmother, well, I gotta go walking now. I told her I was gonna go walking, but I really dedicated myself to this. But see you later. Bye-bye. Learn something. So long, dude. Learn something, of course.